When a proud Comanche scout laughed at a city girl's torn dress in a rough Western saloon, he had no idea that what was about to happen would challenge everything he believed about strength, courage, and honor. What starts as mockery becomes the most dangerous alliance in the Texas territory, and neither of them will survive what comes next unchanged. The year is 1875. The Texas frontier is a powder keg ready to explode. Sarah Bennett steps off the stagecoach in Redemption Creek, and immediately she knows she's made a terrible mistake. The scorching sun blinds her. Dust coats her once pristine blue dress. 5 brutal days from Boston have left her exhausted, disheveled, and completely out of place. But she clutches her leather journal tighter and pushes forward. Because Sarah isn't here for adventure. She's here to find her missing sister. Mayor Wilkins meets her with nervous sweat and anxious warnings. "Some folks here aren't keen on outsiders," he mutters, mopping his forehead. "Especially journalists from back east asking questions." Sarah straightens her spine. She didn't travel across half a continent to be intimidated by small-town politics. "The Boston Chronicle deserves the truth about frontier life," she replies firmly. "Not romanticized lies." The mayor sighs and leads her through town. Sarah's trained eye catches everything: the blacksmith's forge, the general store, women hanging laundry while watching children play. This isn't the lawless wasteland Eastern papers describe. It's a community struggling to survive. But survival here comes with a price. The Silver Dollar Saloon falls silent when Sarah enters. The piano player freezes mid-note. Conversations die. Every eye turns to study this obvious outsider in her city clothes. Sarah feels her cheeks flush but refuses to look down. "Mrs. Cooper," the mayor calls to a copper-haired woman behind the bar. "This is Miss Bennett from Boston. She needs a room." Mrs. Cooper emerges, her lined face retaining traces of faded beauty. "A journalist, eh?" She sizes Sarah up with knowing eyes. "You'll find plenty to write about here. Come on." As Sarah follows Mrs. Cooper upstairs, she feels one gaze burning more intensely than all the others. She turns slightly and locks eyes with a man who makes her breath catch. Tall, bronze skin, long black hair tied back with leather cord. He wears buckskins and a cotton shirt, a blend of two worlds. His face remains impassive, but something in his dark eyes makes her heart quicken in a way she doesn't understand. "That's Swift River," Mrs. Cooper says quietly. "Half Comanche, half white. Works as a scout for the cavalry sometimes. Trades with his mother's people other times. Walks between two worlds and belongs to neither." "Is he dangerous?" Sarah asks, unable to look away. Mrs. Cooper chuckles darkly. "Everyone in this town is dangerous in their own way, honey. But Swift River has saved more lives than he's taken, which is more than I can say for some who call themselves civilized." That evening, Sarah ventures downstairs to begin her research. The saloon has transformed. Crowded, boisterous, alive with card games and dancing. She approaches Mrs. Cooper at the bar. "May I interview you? I'd like to understand how a woman comes to run a saloon on the frontier." Mrs. Cooper laughs. "You city folks think you're so subtle. Fine, but not tonight. I've got a business to run." Sarah turns to leave and bumps directly into a bearded man reeking of whiskey. "Well, look what we got here, boys," he slurs, blocking her path. "A real lady journalist." His companions laugh crudely. "I've got stories that would curl that pretty hair of yours. Why don't you interview me upstairs?" Ice floods Sarah's veins. "No, thank you. Excuse me." The drunk grabs her arm hard. "Don't be unfriendly now. Release her." The deep voice cuts through the noise like a knife. Swift River stands behind them, his presence commanding attention despite his quiet tone. The entire saloon seems to hold its breath. "Mind your own business, Injun," the drunk spits. Swift River doesn't move, but something in his stance makes the drunk's companions back away immediately. The lady said no. The drunk releases Sarah's arm to confront Swift River, but in his inebriated state, he stumbles. Grabbing for balance, he catches Sarah's sleeve and tears it from shoulder to elbow with a horrible ripping sound. Swift River moves with startling speed, positioning himself between Sarah and her harasser. The drunk takes a wild swing. Swift River dodges easily and delivers one precise blow. The troublemaker crumples unconscious to the floor. Then Swift River looks at Sarah's torn dress and flushed face, and he smiles. It's not a kind smile. "City girls don't last long out here," he says, his voice carrying unmistakable amusement at her predicament. Sarah's embarrassment transforms instantly into indignation. "I appreciate your assistance, sir, but I assure you I'm perfectly capable of handling myself." Swift River's smile widens into something almost mocking. "Is that so?" He glances around at the rough crowd watching them. "Well, Miss Boston, I look forward to seeing that." He walks away, leaving Sarah humiliated and furious. She has no idea that the man who just laughed at her will soon become the only person standing between her and death. Dawn breaks over Redemption Creek with brutal heat already building. Sarah wakes to unfamiliar sounds. Horses neighing, shutters being raised, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Her torn dress hangs over a chair, a stark reminder of last night's humiliation. After dressing in her second-best outfit, she descends to find Mrs. Cooper sweeping the main room. "Morning, Miss Bennett," Mrs. Cooper calls. "There's coffee on the stove." Sarah gratefully accepts a mug of the strong, bitter brew. "Thank you. Could you direct me to someone who might repair my dress?" "Martha at the general store does fine needlework. But first, eat something. Can't have you fainting in this heat." As Sarah eats simple biscuits and bacon, the saloon's front door swings open. Swift River enters, ducking slightly under the doorframe. In morning light, Sarah notices details she'd missed before. A small scar above his right eyebrow, an eagle feather tied into his hair, the way his movements combine fluid grace with coiled strength like a predator constantly assessing threats. "Morning, Swift," Mrs. Cooper calls. "Hungry?" He nods, his eyes briefly meeting Sarah's before he takes a seat at a table across the room. Mrs. Cooper places a plate before him, then turns to Sarah with a knowing smile. "Why don't you interview him for your article? Might give your Eastern readers a perspective they haven't considered." Sarah hesitates. The man had laughed at her predicament last night, finding amusement in her torn dress and discomfort. Yet something about him intrigues her beyond professional curiosity. She needs information about the frontier, and he clearly knows it intimately. With notebook in hand, she approaches his table. "Mr. River," she begins, "I wonder if I might ask you some questions for my article." He looks up, amusement flickering in his eyes. Swift River is one name, not a first and last like white men use. Sarah feels her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I apologize for my ignorance. May I join you, Swift River?" He gestures to the empty chair across from him. The city girl wants to learn. That's new. Determined not to be rattled, Sarah opens her notebook. "You're half Comanche, I understand. Would you tell me about your experience straddling two worlds?" Swift River studies her for a long moment, and Sarah has the uncomfortable sense of being evaluated like prey. "Why do you care?" "Because most of what's written about frontier life comes from one perspective. Usually white men from the East who've never set foot west of the Mississippi," Sarah replies candidly. "I want to write the truth, even if it's complicated." Something shifts in his expression, a softening almost imperceptible. "Truth is always complicated. My father was a cavalry officer who fell in love with a Comanche woman after she was captured during a raid. Instead of sending her to a reservation, he married her. Neither his people nor hers forgave them for it." "And you?" Sarah asks softly, her pen pausing above the paper. "I learned to hunt and track from my mother's people. Learned reading and mathematics from my father. When they both died of fever 10 winters ago, I discovered neither world fully accepted me." His voice remains matter-of-fact, without self-pity, which somehow makes it more heartbreaking. Sarah writes quickly, captivated by his honesty. "How did you come to Redemption Creek?" "The cavalry values my tracking skills, but doesn't trust me enough for a commission. This town needs someone who can communicate with both settlers and native tribes. I fill that space." He takes a bite of food, then fixes her with an intense stare. "Now, city girl, why are you really here? Boston newspapers don't care about small Texas towns." Sarah's hand freezes. She closes her notebook slowly. The moment feels suddenly dangerous, as if her answer will determine something crucial. My editor thought sending a woman to write about the frontier would sell papers, a novelty. But I have my own reasons. She hesitates, then continues, drawn by something in his steady gaze that demands honesty. My sister Lillian came west 5 years ago. She wrote regularly at first, then the letters stopped. Her last letter was postmarked from a town not far from here. Understanding dawns in Swift River's eyes. You're looking for her. Sarah nods, relieved and terrified to have spoken the truth aloud. The newspaper assignment gives me a reason to be here, to ask questions without raising suspicion. Her last letter mentioned a man named Jackson Crawford. She was concerned about his business dealings. Swift River's expression darkens immediately, his jaw tightening. Crawford owns the largest cattle ranch in the territory, has the ear of the territorial governor, not someone to cross lightly. Do you know him? Sarah asks, leaning forward despite the warning in his tone. Our paths have crossed. He wants Comanche land for grazing. Doesn't care how he gets it. Swift River pushes his empty plate away, his eyes now calculating. If your sister questioned Crawford's methods, that might explain why her letters stopped. A chill runs through Sarah despite the growing heat of the day. The implication hangs between them, terrible and unspoken. Will you help me find her? Sarah asks, her voice steadier than she feels. Swift River's gaze is measuring, almost cold. Why would I risk Crawford's anger to help a city girl I just met? Because you know what it's like to be caught between worlds, Sarah replies, meeting his eyes without flinching. Because you helped me last night when you didn't have to. Because I think, underneath that mockery, you're a man who understands what it means to fight for family. A ghost of a smile touches his lips. You're bolder than you look, Miss Bennett. Sarah, she corrects. If we're to work together, you should use my given name. Swift River nods slowly, something shifting in the air between them. I'll take you to Crawford's ranch tomorrow. We'll say you're writing about cattle operations for your newspaper. But tonight, meet me behind the livery stable at sunset. Why? He stands, towering over her, his presence somehow both protective and threatening. If you're going to survive out here, city girl, you need to learn some basics, starting with how to ride properly and how to shoot. Before Sarah can respond, the saloon doors burst open. A young boy rushes in, his face streaked with dust and tears. Swift, come quick. Riders attacked the Comanche camp by the creek. Swift River is moving before the boy finishes speaking. At the door, he pauses, glancing back at Sarah with an expression she can't quite read. Still think you can handle yourself out here? Without waiting for a response, he disappears into the harsh sunlight. Sarah sits alone at the table, her half-finished interview abandoned, realizing her search for Lillian has just become far more dangerous than she ever imagined. But she has no idea that danger is already watching her. That evening, as the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, Sarah makes her way to the livery stable. She spent the afternoon interviewing townspeople, but thoughts of Swift River and his promised lessons kept intruding. She finds him waiting with 2 horses, a sturdy bay gelding and a smaller dun mare. You're late, he observes, holding out the mare's reins. I was repairing my dress, Sarah replies, eyeing the horse nervously. I've only ridden in city parks on gentle ponies with side saddles. Swift River's laugh is unexpected, deep and genuine, transforming his usually serious face. No side saddles here. Mount up, city girl, daylight's wasting. Sarah approaches the mare cautiously. The horse seems enormous up close, its eyes rolling slightly as it senses her inexperience. I don't. Foot in the stirrup, Swift River interrupts. Pull yourself up. The horse will do most of the work. Sarah tries, her foot slips. She tries again, finally managing to haul herself awkwardly into the saddle. The ground suddenly seems terrifyingly far away. Both legs on one side feel safer, she says, already feeling unbalanced. Both legs on one side will get you killed if you need to move fast. Swift River mounts his own horse with fluid grace that makes Sarah feel even more inadequate. Follow me. Try not to fall off. The Texas sunset paints the sky in brilliant hues of orange and crimson as Swift River leads Sarah to a secluded clearing a mile from town. Her thighs already ache from the unfamiliar position of riding astride. Her back protests the constant jarring, but she refuses to complain. The Comanche scout had been right about one thing. If she wanted to find Lillian, she needed to adapt to frontier life quickly, or die trying. "Dismount here," Swift River instructs, swinging down from his horse with that same maddening ease. Sarah attempts to copy his movement, but misjudges the distance. She would have fallen hard had Swift River not caught her arm, steadying her with a grip that's firm yet somehow gentle. For a moment, they stand close enough that Sarah can see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, smell the leather and sage scent that clings to him. Her breath catches. "Thank you," she murmurs, stepping back quickly, her heart racing in a way that has nothing to do with nearly falling. "What happened at the Comanche camp today?" she asks, needing to break the sudden tension. A shadow crosses his face. Cattle rustlers used the chaos as cover to steal from Crawford's herd. They fired shots near the camp to make it look like the Comanche were responsible. "That's horrible," Sarah says, genuinely shocked. "Were there casualties?" "2 warriors wounded, but they'll recover. I tracked the rustlers far enough to confirm they weren't Comanche." His jaw tightens, rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "Crawford won't care. He'll use any excuse to push my mother's people further from their hunting grounds." Sarah processes this information, her journalist's mind connecting dots. Could this be connected to what my sister discovered? Possibly. Swift River's eyes sharpen. Lillian's letters. Did she mention specific concerns about Crawford? Sarah retrieves a folded paper from her pocket, her hands trembling slightly. Her last letter. She wrote that Crawford was expanding his empire through means that would shock civilized society. She was investigating land deeds at the county office when she found irregularities. Swift River reads the letter carefully, his expression growing darker with each line. When he hands it back, his voice is grave. "Your sister was brave. Perhaps too brave." He meets Sarah's eyes. "We should be cautious tomorrow at Crawford's ranch. Now, your first lesson." From his saddlebag he produces a revolver. A Colt Peacemaker, its metal gleaming in the fading light. "Ever fired a gun, city girl?" Sarah shakes her head, staring at the weapon with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Never had cause to in Boston. Out here it could save your life." He demonstrates the proper grip, his hands moving with practiced confidence. "Hold it firmly, but don't tense your arm. That bottle on the fallen log, that's your target." Sarah takes the gun, surprised by its weight, by how cold and real it feels in her hands. Following Swift River's instructions, she aims and pulls the trigger. The explosion of sound and the violent recoil knock her back a step. The shot goes wild, hitting nothing but dirt. "Again," Swift River says, moving behind her. "Widen your stance, both eyes open." His hands adjust her posture, his chest nearly touching her back. Sarah becomes acutely aware of his presence, the warmth radiating from him, the strength in his hands as they guide her arms. She forces herself to focus, aiming once more at the distant bottle. She fires. The bottle explodes into 1,000 glittering fragments. "Good," Swift River says, stepping away, leaving her feeling suddenly cold despite the warm evening. Now the rifle. For the next hour, Swift River patiently teaches Sarah the basics of shooting and riding properly. As darkness falls, they practice moving silently through underbrush, a skill he learned from his Comanche mother. He shows her how to read tracks, how to listen for sounds that don't belong, how to make herself invisible in terrain that seems to offer no cover. "Why are you helping me?" Sarah finally asks as they prepare to return to town. The question has been burning inside her all evening. "You barely know me. You laughed at me just last night." Swift River is quiet for so long she thinks he won't answer. The cicadas sing in the growing darkness. Finally he speaks, his voice low and raw. "I had a sister too. Yellowbird. She died during a government relocation when I was 16. I couldn't save her. The pain beneath his controlled words makes Sarah's throat tighten. I'm sorry about Yellowbird. He nods once, accepting her sympathy without comment. Tomorrow we ride at dawn. Crawford's ranch is 2 hours from town. Wear practical clothes. That fancy dress will only draw attention. I'll be ready, Sarah promises. As they ride back to Redemption Creek under an emerging canopy of stars, Sarah realizes she's made an ally. But what she doesn't know is that they're both about to walk into a trap that will test everything they've just learned. True to her word, Sarah is waiting outside the livery stable as the first light of dawn breaks the horizon. She's traded her city clothes for a simple riding skirt and sturdy boots borrowed from Mrs. Cooper, who's become an unexpected ally and friend in this strange new world. Swift River arrives leading the same 2 horses from yesterday. He assesses her outfit with a slight nod of approval. You learn fast, city girl. Sarah, she reminds him, mounting her horse with more confidence than the previous day. A ghost of a smile touches his lips. Sarah. The ride to Crawford's ranch takes them through breathtaking landscape. Rolling hills covered in wildflowers, stands of oak and pecan trees, wide open prairie that seems to stretch forever. Swift River points out tracks and signs that would have been invisible to her untrained eye. Deer paths, rabbit warrens, and once the fresh prints of a mountain lion that makes Sarah's skin prickle with fear. Crawford's land begins here, he says eventually, indicating a barbed wire fence stretching as far as the eye can see. 2 years ago, this was open range where Comanche hunted buffalo. Now it's private property. The bitterness in his voice is unmistakable. They follow the fence line until a large ranch house comes into view. Built of sturdy timber with a wide porch, it speaks of wealth and permanence and power. Cowboys move about the property, tending to horses and cattle. Everything looks prosperous and legitimate. But Sarah's journalist instincts are screaming that something is very wrong here. Remember, Swift River cautions as they approach, you're here to write about cattle ranching, nothing more. Don't mention your sister. Don't ask too many questions about land deals. Just be the naive Eastern journalist they expect. A foreman meets them in the yard, his weathered face immediately suspicious. State your business. Sarah smiles pleasantly, channeling every ounce of harmless femininity she can muster. Sarah Bennett, Boston Chronicle. I'm writing about successful cattle operations in the territory. Mr. Crawford's ranch was highly recommended. The foreman's eyes narrow at Swift River. What's he doing here? Mr. River is my guide, Sarah replies smoothly. I'm unfamiliar with the territory and need protection during my travels. Wait here, the foreman grunts, disappearing into the house. Minutes later, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and an expensive suit emerges. Jackson Crawford has the bearing of someone accustomed to authority and getting exactly what he wants. His smile is practiced and charming, but doesn't reach his cold blue eyes, eyes that remind Sarah of a predator assessing prey. Miss Bennett, he says warmly, extending his hand to Sarah while completely ignoring Swift River. Welcome to Rocking Sea Ranch. I'm always happy to speak with the press about the future of the cattle industry. Sarah shakes his hand, noting his crushing grip, a deliberate power play. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment, Mr. Crawford. Please, call me Jack. All my friends do. He gestures toward the house. Come inside for refreshments. Your guide can wait with the horses. Sarah glances at Swift River, who gives an almost imperceptible nod. She's on her own now. That would be lovely, she replies. The ranch house's interior is opulently furnished with imported carpets and furniture that wouldn't look out of place in a Boston mansion. Crawford leads her to a study lined with books that appear unread, their spines unbroken. Decorations meant to impress rather than actual reading material. Whiskey? He offers, moving to an expensive crystal decanter. Water, thank you. Sarah declines, opening her notebook. Crawford pours himself a generous whiskey and settles into a leather chair. So, what would you like to know about my operation? Your ranch is impressive, Sarah begins. How many acres do you currently own? 20,000, with plans to expand further west. Pride colors his voice. That's considerable growth in just a few years, Sarah observes, keeping her tone neutral. I understand this was open range not long ago. Something flickers in Crawford's eyes, there and gone in an instant. Progress requires change, Miss Bennett. The open range system was inefficient and chaotic. Property rights and fences mean better breeding, better stock, better profits for everyone. And the native tribes who used this land before? Sarah keeps her pen moving across the page, not looking up. Crawford's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. They're being civilized on reservations, as is government policy. It's better for everyone, really. Can't have savages roaming freely when decent people are trying to build something permanent. The casual cruelty in his words makes Sarah's skin crawl, but she maintains her professional demeanor. The interview continues with Sarah asking increasingly detailed questions about land acquisition, water rights, and property transfers. Crawford answers smoothly, but she notices his growing impatience, the way his hand tightens around his whiskey glass. You seem very interested in property matters for a cattle article, he observes, refilling his glass with deliberate slowness. Sarah maintains her composure, giving him her most innocent smile. Thorough reporting requires understanding all aspects of the business, Mr. Crawford. Crawford sets down his glass with a sharp click that echoes in the study. You know, you remind me of someone. Another woman who asked too many questions. Lillian, I believe her name was. Sarah's heart nearly stops, but years of practice hiding her emotions in Boston's competitive journalism world serve her well. She keeps her expression neutral, curious but not alarmed. Oh? Another journalist? She claimed to be. Crawford moves closer, circling behind her chair like a predator. She too was interested in land deeds and property transfers. Funny coincidence, don't you think? Sarah gathers her notes, every instinct screaming danger. How unfortunate. I should be going. My guide will worry. Crawford blocks her path to the door, his friendly mask slipping completely. Your guide is a half-savage, Miss Bennett. I wouldn't trust him with a lady's safety. His voice hardens, all pretense of hospitality gone. Why are you really here? Before Sarah can answer, a commotion erupts outside. Gunshots crack through the afternoon air. Men shout. Crawford curses viciously, moving to the window. Raiders at the north pasture. He grabs a rifle from a wall mount, his movements sharp with fury. Stay here, he commands, striding toward the door. The moment he leaves, Sarah springs into action. She begins searching the study with desperate speed, opening drawers, examining papers on the desk, looking for anything connected to Lillian. In a locked drawer, which she forces open with a letter opener, she finds a stack of land deeds. Her journalist's eye immediately spots something wrong. Some signatures look suspiciously different despite bearing the same name, the handwriting varying in subtle but telltale ways. Forgeries, she whispers, her pulse racing. She'd reported on a forgery case in Boston and recognizes the technique immediately. Crawford is stealing land through fraudulent documents. Find what you're looking for? Crawford's voice comes from the doorway, cold and deadly. Sarah spins around. Crawford stands there, his rifle now leveled directly at her chest. The expression on his face is one of pure malice, all charm stripped away to reveal something monstrous beneath. I know who you are, Sarah Bennett, he says, each word dripping with menace. Your sister was just as troublesome before she disappeared. Made quite a fuss about my business practices. Had to deal with that problem. Terror and rage war inside Sarah. Where's Lillian? She demands, her voice shaking. What did you do to her? Crawford's smile is chilling, inhuman. Gone. Locked away where she can't cause any more trouble. Just like you'll be, once I explain how you and that Comanche scout tried to rustle my cattle during the confusion. Tragic, really. Self-defense, of course. His finger begins to tighten on the trigger. A floorboard creaks behind Crawford. Before he can turn, Swift River's arm locks around his throat in a crushing hold. The rancher struggles violently, but Swift River's strength is superior, his technique flawless. Within moments, Crawford slumps unconscious to the floor. We need to leave now, Swift River says urgently, taking Crawford's rifle. His men saw me enter the house. They'll be here in minutes. Not without proof, Sarah insists. grabbing the forged deeds with trembling hands. And not without learning what happened to Lillian. Swift River's expression softened slightly despite the urgency of their situation. In his desk, there's a letter addressed to the territorial governor. It mentions a woman being held at Miller's Creek mining camp until she agrees to sign away her claim to property. Sarah finds the letter with shaking hands, hope and terror flooding through her in equal measure. Miller's Creek, where is that? A day's ride north, Swift River replies, listening intently to the sound of approaching footsteps and shouting voices. We'll never make it out the front. He leads her to a window at the rear of the study, already working to open it. Can you ride hard? Sarah clutches the documents that might save her sister, might expose Crawford's crimes, might cost them both their lives. For Lillian? Absolutely. Swift River's smile is unexpected, transforming his serious face with something that might be admiration. You've earned a new name, city girl. Swift Heart would suit you better. Before Sarah can respond to the warmth spreading through her chest at his words, he has the window open. Together they slip out just as Crawford's men burst into the study behind them, and their desperate race for survival begins. Hoofbeats pound across the Texas prairie like thunder as Sarah and Swift River push their mounts to the absolute limit. Behind them, Crawford's men give chase, firing occasional shots that crack through the air too close for comfort. The distance between them gradually widens as Swift River leads them through terrain he knows intimately, terrain Crawford's ranch hands hesitate to follow. A steep ravine that makes Sarah's heart leap into her throat as they descend at breakneck speed. A treacherous creek crossing where the water rushes past their horses' legs and threatens to sweep them downstream. Finally, into a dense thicket of trees and underbrush, where the horses can barely squeeze through the narrow game trails. They won't follow us here, Swift River says, his breath coming fast but controlled. This is Comanche land. Crawford's men are superstitious about it. They fear the spirits of those who died defending it. Sarah leans forward in her saddle, every muscle screaming in protest. She's never ridden so hard in her life, never felt such a combination of terror and exhilaration. We have to reach Miller's Creek, she says urgently. If Lillian is there, we will, Swift River promises, his expression grave. But not directly. Crawford will have men watching the main trails by now. He knows we'll try to reach her. He glances at the setting sun painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. We'll rest here tonight and continue at first light. Move in darkness through paths only the Comanche know. As darkness falls like a blanket across the land, Swift River builds a small, nearly smokeless fire in a sheltered hollow. Sarah spreads out the documents they'd stolen from Crawford's study, examining them by the flickering firelight with intense focus. These deeds, they're all forgeries, she says, her voice tight with controlled anger. He's been forcing people to sign away their land claims, or forging their signatures when they refuse. Look at this one. The handwriting changes midway through the signature. And this one. The pressure of the pen is inconsistent, like someone was copying slowly rather than signing naturally. Swift River studies the papers with equal intensity. This explains much. 3 homesteaders were found dead last winter, all officially ruled accidents. All 3 had refused to sell their land to Crawford. Murder, Sarah whispers, the word hanging heavy in the night air. And this letter to the territorial governor, Swift River continues, holding the paper closer to the firelight. It mentions dealing with the Indian problem once and for all. He's planning something against my mother's people. Something big. Sarah's throat tightens with rage and fear. We must reach Miller's Creek, find my sister, and then get these documents to someone with authority. Someone who will actually act on this evidence. Fort Richardson, Swift River says decisively. The commander there, Colonel Harrington, is a fair man. I've worked with him before. He would act on evidence like this, especially with witness testimony from your sister. Sarah moves closer to the fire, shivering despite the warm night. The events of the day are catching up with her. The confrontation with Crawford, their desperate escape, the realization of just how powerful and ruthless their enemy is. Why risk so much for me? She asks quietly. For my sister? You could have stayed out of this. Could have let me walk into Crawford's ranch alone and face the consequences. Swift River is quiet for a long moment, poking at the embers with a stick, his face unreadable in the dancing shadows. When he finally speaks, his voice is soft but carries deep emotion. When I first saw you in that saloon with your torn dress, I laughed. Another Eastern tenderfoot who wouldn't last a week in the harsh reality of this territory. He looks up, meeting her eyes across the flames. I was wrong. You have courage, Sarah Bennett. More courage than most men I've known. You could have turned back a dozen times. But you kept pushing forward. The use of her given name, spoken with such quiet respect, warms Sarah more than the fire ever could. You've shown me kindness when you had no reason to, she replies, her voice catching. Taught me to survive in this land. Given me hope that I might actually find Lillian alive. Swift River's expression softens in a way she hasn't seen before. My father used to say that people are not defined by their blood or where they were born, but by the choices they make when tested. He shifts slightly closer. You could have returned to Boston when you discovered the danger. Instead, you chose to fight for your sister, to fight for the truth even when it put you in mortal danger. As you fight for your mother's people, Sarah says, understanding dawning. Even when neither world fully accepts you, even when it would be easier to just walk away. Something shifts between them in that moment, a recognition of kindred spirits despite their vastly different worlds. Swift River reaches across the fire, his calloused fingers gently touching her hand. The contact sends electricity through Sarah's entire body. Rest now, he says, his deep voice softer than she's ever heard it. Tomorrow will test us both in ways we can't imagine. But as Sarah tries to sleep, wrapped in a blanket under the vast Texas sky filled with more stars than she knew existed, one thought keeps circling through her mind. Tomorrow, they face Crawford's men again. Tomorrow they try to rescue Lillian from whatever hell she's been trapped in. Tomorrow, one or both of them might die. Dawn finds them already riding north, following game trails and dry creek beds to avoid the main roads. Swift River moves with absolute confidence through terrain that all looks the same to Sarah's untrained eyes. Another reminder of how much she still has to learn about this unforgiving land. By midday, they crest a ridge overlooking a valley where a mining operation scars the landscape like an open wound. Crude wooden buildings cluster around a mine entrance, with armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Even from this distance, Sarah can see the hardness in these men, the casual violence in how they carry themselves. Miller's Creek, Swift River confirms, passing Sarah his spyglass. Sarah scans the camp, her heart pounding so hard she can barely breathe. The largest building. That's likely where they keep prisoners? Most likely. Swift River's expression is thoughtful, calculating. There must be 20 men down there. We can't fight that many directly. Then how do we get in? Desperation creeps into Sarah's voice. Not all guards work at once. Most will enter the mine during the day shift. We wait until then, create a distraction at the mine entrance, then search for Lillian while their attention is elsewhere. The plan is dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it's their only chance. They wait until mid-afternoon when the majority of the men disappear into the mine, leaving only a handful of guards on the surface. Swift River has positioned himself near the mine entrance, while Sarah circles to approach the main building from behind, her heart hammering against her ribs. The distraction comes in the form of a small explosion. Swift River has packed black powder he carries for emergency signals into a crevice near the mine entrance. The resulting blast isn't large enough to cause a cave-in, but creates sufficient panic to draw the remaining guards away from the buildings. Men shout, running toward the mine entrance with weapons drawn, thinking they're under attack. Sarah slips through the back door of the main structure, finding herself in a dimly lit hallway with several doors. Her hands shake as she tries each one. Most are unlocked and empty, storage rooms and offices. But the last door is secured with a heavy padlock. Lillian, she calls softly, pressing her ear to the wood, barely daring to hope. A weak voice responds from within. Who's there? The sound of her sister's voice after so many months of silence nearly breaks Sarah completely. It's Sarah. I've come to take you home. A sob of disbelief comes from the other side. Sarah, is it really you? Yes. Hold on. I'm getting you out. With trembling hands, Sarah examines the lock. Swift River has shown her how to pick simple locks during their practice sessions, but this one is beyond her limited skills. Looking around desperately, she spots a fire axe mounted on the wall for emergencies. The noise will attract attention, but she has no choice. 3 solid strikes later, wood splinters and the door swings open to reveal a small, windowless room that stinks of fear and confinement. Lillian sits on a narrow cot, her once vibrant face now pale and thin, her blonde hair dull and matted. But her eyes, so like Sarah's own, light with fierce joy at the sight of her sister. You came, Lillian whispers as they embrace, both women crying. I never thought anyone would find me. I thought I'd die here. Can you walk? Sarah asks urgently, noting her sister's weakened state, the way she trembles. Lillian nods determinedly, drawing on reserves of strength Sarah recognizes from their childhood. Just get me out of here. I have information that will destroy Crawford completely. We already have some evidence, Sarah assures her, supporting Lillian as they move toward the exit. Swift River is helping us. Swift River? Lillian's eyes widen. The Scout? Crawford hates him. Considers him a threat to his plans for Comanche land. They've almost reached the door when a shot splinters the wooden frame inches from Sarah's head, the sound deafening in the confined space. Crawford stands in the doorway, his face contorted with rage, revolver aimed directly at the sisters. You've been thorns in my side for too long, Bennett women, he snarls, his voice shaking with fury. I built everything I have with my own hands, fought for every acre, every cow, every dollar. No one is going to take it from me, especially not a pair of meddling females and a half-breed scout. Sarah positions herself in front of Lillian, her body shielding her weakened sister. Your empire is built on forged deeds and murder, she says, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her. It ends today. Crawford's finger tightens on the trigger, his smile monstrous. I'll start with you, then your sister. No one will question 2 more mysterious deaths in this territory. Women die on the frontier all the time. Tragic accidents. A blur of movement comes from behind Crawford. Swift River brings the butt of his rifle down hard on the rancher's wrist. The gun clatters to the floor as Crawford howls in pain, clutching his shattered wrist. Swift River follows with a powerful blow to the jaw, sending the man sprawling unconscious to the floor. We must hurry, Swift River says urgently, already binding Crawford with a length of rope. His men heard the shots. They're coming. He lifts Lillian easily, carrying her outside where their horses wait. Sarah follows, her heart pounding with fear and elation in equal measure. They're halfway across the compound when shouts erupt from the mine entrance. Crawford's men have realized what's happening. Ride for Fort Richardson, Swift River commands, helping Lillian onto his horse before mounting behind her. Don't stop for anything, no matter what you hear behind us. The next hours pass in a blur of pounding hooves and choking dust. Twice they hear pursuers getting dangerously close, and Swift River changes direction, using every trick he knows to confuse their trail. He leads them through a narrow canyon where they have to dismount and lead the horses, through a river where the water erases their tracks, across rocky terrain that leaves no sign of their passage. As sunset paints the sky in shades of crimson and purple, the American flag flying above Fort Richardson finally comes into view. Sarah almost weeps with relief. Colonel Harrington is a weathered man in his 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that have seen too much frontier violence. He listens gravely to their story, examining the documents they'd taken from Crawford's study with increasing fury. When Lillian provides her written testimony about being kidnapped and held prisoner for months, about the things she witnessed at Crawford's ranch before her imprisonment, the colonel's face hardens with resolve. I've had my suspicions about Crawford for some time, he admits, his voice rough with contained anger. But without evidence, my hands were tied. He has powerful friends in the territorial government. He looks at the forged deeds, at Lillian's testimony, at Sarah's detailed notes. This changes everything. He summons his adjutant with a sharp command. Prepare a full detachment. We ride for Miller's Creek at dawn to arrest Jackson Crawford and everyone connected to his operation. That night, as Lillian rests under the fort doctor's care, slowly recovering her strength, Sarah and Swift River stand on the fort's ramparts. They watch the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky, the same stars that have watched over this land for countless generations. "What will you do now?" Swift River asks quietly, not looking at her. "Return to Boston with your sister? Write your story and advance your career?" Sarah turns to face him, suddenly aware that the thought of leaving brings an unexpected ache to her heart that has nothing to do with exhaustion. In the short time she's known this man, he's become important to her in ways she couldn't have imagined. Important in ways that terrify and exhilarate her. "I could," she admits slowly, choosing her words carefully. "The Chronicle would publish this story. It would make my reputation as a serious journalist. Open doors that have always been closed to women in my profession." Swift River nods, his expression carefully neutral in that way she's learned means he's feeling deeply. "You would be good at it. You see truth where others miss it, ask questions others are afraid to ask." "But the story isn't finished," Sarah continues, her pulse quickening. "Crawford isn't the only one exploiting this territory. The people here, all the people, including the Comanche, deserve to have their stories told truthfully. Not through the lens of Eastern prejudice, but as they really are." Hope flickers in Swift River's dark eyes, barely visible in the starlight. "You would stay? Risk Crawford's remaining allies? Risk the harsh conditions? Risk everything you've built in Boston?" Sarah steps closer, her heart racing with a different kind of courage than she'd needed to face Crawford's men. This courage is somehow more terrifying, the courage to admit what she feels, what she wants. "If I had a reason to stay." Swift River's hand gently touches her cheek, his calloused fingers surprisingly tender. "When I first saw you in that saloon with your torn dress and your city ways, I thought you were just another Eastern woman who wouldn't last a week in this territory." His voice deepens with emotion that makes Sarah's breath catch. "Now I can't imagine this land without you in it. Can't imagine my life without you in it." "Then I'll stay," Sarah whispers, her eyes locked with his. "Not just for the stories, though they're important, but for the man who taught me to see beyond what I thought I knew. About this territory, about the Comanche, about what I'm capable of." She smiles up at him, feeling tears on her cheeks. "About myself." Under the vast Texas sky, with the fort quiet around them and the promise of justice finally coming, Swift River lowers his head and kisses her. In that moment, Sarah knows she's found something she hadn't even realized she was searching for. Not just her sister, though that joy fills her heart, but a place where she truly belongs, and a man who walks between two worlds just as she now does. A man who saw past the torn dress and the city ways to the courage beneath. A man who laughed at her once, and now loves her. 3 months later, the Redemption Creek Gazette publishes its first edition, with Sarah Bennett listed proudly as editor and publisher. Its lead story details Crawford's arrest and trial, his conviction on multiple counts of fraud, murder, and conspiracy. The territorial government, embarrassed by the scandal, institutes new policies respecting Comanche hunting grounds and water rights. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Among the Gazette's regular contributors is a scout known both to settlers and native tribes, whose insights bridge understanding between two worlds. His column, Between Two Fires, becomes required reading for anyone trying to understand the complex reality of frontier life, beyond the simple narratives of civilization versus savagery. And if the editor is often seen riding alongside this scout, their hands occasionally touching as their horses walk side by side across the prairie, the townspeople merely smile and nod. Mrs. Cooper serves them coffee at the Silver Dollar Saloon each morning, watching them with knowing eyes. Mayor Wilkins tips his hat when they pass on the street. Even the blacksmith, who once viewed Swift River with suspicion, now greets him warmly. Because in a land where survival depends on finding strength in unexpected places, they recognize what Sarah and Swift River have discovered together. That the truest path forward lies not in the rigid boundaries of the past, but in the courageous hearts willing to forge a new future together. Lillian recovers fully and decides to stay as well. opening a legal practice helping settlers and natives alike navigate the complex web of land rights and property law. The Bennett sisters, once considered delicate Eastern flowers, have put down roots in Texas soil that will not be easily torn away. On their wedding day, Swift River gives Sarah a new name in the Comanche tradition: Swift Heart, the woman who rides like the wind and fights like a warrior for truth. Sarah gives him something in return: a place in both worlds, acceptance not despite his mixed heritage, but because of the strength it brings. Their story becomes part of the tapestry of the West, woven together with countless others who dared to cross boundaries, challenge injustice, and build something new from the ashes of conflict. And late at night, when Sarah writes in her journal by lamplight, she sometimes thinks back to that moment in the Silver Dollar Saloon when her dress tore and a proud Comanche scout laughed at her predicament. She thinks about how a single moment of humiliation became the beginning of everything, the beginning of courage she didn't know she possessed, of a love she never expected to find, of a life more authentic and fulfilling than anything Boston could have offered. She writes these stories not for fame or advancement, but because they matter, because truth matters, because every person's story, whether settler or Comanche, city girl or frontier scout, deserves to be told honestly, and because sometimes, when someone laughs at you in your moment of vulnerability, it's the beginning of something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story of courage, redemption, and unexpected love on the American frontier, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you thought of Sarah and Swift River's journey. Did the twists keep you guessing? What would you have done in Sarah's place? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next story.